Who has a nose for horror? Dracula has a nose for horror. Hopefully. Today's spooky spot, we're having a look at the Jakks-specific Van Helsing monster slayer, Dracula with pygmy bats. Oh, I hope he's got a nose this time. Set in the 19th century, deep in the mountains of Carpathia, lies the mysterious and mythic land of Transylvania, a vivid epic backdrop for this tale of ultimate evil against a lone force of good, Van Helsing. In this ongoing battle to rid the world of fiendish creatures, Van Helsing, on order of a secret society, travels to Transylvania to bring down Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, and the Wolfman, and joins forces with the fearless Anne of Valerius out to rid her family of a generations-old curse by defeating the vampire. Now, for some of you, you may know why it's so special. I wanted to go back and look at this figure again. Yes, this does mark technically the second time we've looked at Count Dracula with pygmy bats. And why, in fact, are we looking at this figure again? What's so cool about this figure? It wasn't so much the fact that the figure was really good. It's more for what ended up happening to the first time I looked at the figure. Unfortunately, part of the packaging was stuck to Dracula's face. And sure enough, when I removed the part of the cardboard, it took also part of Dracula's nose and some of his lower mouth as well. And it made for more of a comedic review than anything else. And while, luckily for this one, this remains unscathed, his face and nose are still intact, I thought it would be fun again to go back and have a look at this figure again. And one thing obviously we can also do as well in this review is take a tape measure just to see how tall Count Dracula stands. In this case, Dracula is about 4 inches in height, or is roughly about 10 centimeters tall. By the way, before we resume with the rest of this review, does anybody else notice a foul stench in the studio? It smells like something has died. Just looking around right now. Oh, I know what it is. I left a copy of Van Helsing over by the VCR. Yes, I have a copy of Van Helsing on VHS. And yes, that's the thing that I think that's omitting that foul stench. I'm going to have to dispose of that pretty soon after this review. If not, it's going to stink up this whole place. Anyways, getting a closer look, I'm implying the fact that Van Helsing was garbage. Anyways, let's look at the accessories that come included with Dracula, and then we'll have a look at the feature that he does. It's so funny. Anyways, though, the figure, first of all, comes included as pygmy bats. The pygmy bats. One of the joyous things about Van Helsing was the fact he has all these little pygmy bats. They're kind of interesting to look at, to be honest. There's no articulation anywhere on the pygmy bat. It's essentially just a rubbery piece, so you can bend and move the wings, for example, bend and move the arms, but nothing's going to stay in place. I guess to its credit, it's decently detailed. It doesn't even have to be necessarily something you're going to want to display with Dracula. I don't know why anybody's going to want to display these figures, but you could probably use this pygmy bat maybe for something else. Get one last look at his gruesome-looking face. Decent detail. Sorry, didn't mean to scare any of you by doing that. You can see some decent detailing. It's got some buck teeth going on there. Kind of looks like one of my hamsters I had growing up. That hamster loved to nibble my fingers. In fact, I actually called the hamster Mr. Nibbler. Mr. Nibbler. Anyways, let's move the pygmy bat out of the way. Out of the way. And let's have a look at the other thing that comes included with Dracula. He comes included with a rather interesting looking cape. It's all made of here rubbery plastic. And while there's all this cool detail work that Jakks actually put into it, unfortunately nothing gets painted. It's all just left relegated just to the molded black plastic or molded black rubber. You can see there's a hole on the back. That's not where the stake went into his back. That's actually where the button will allow to activate his feature. It's ridiculous. But there's a little button actually on the back of his torso that feeds its way through the hole on the back of the cape. So you can still press the button while the cape is still on his body. To show you what it actually looks like, just to spin this around, first of all, there's the peg on the back of the figure's body. You have to kind of line the peg, obviously, and fit it into the hole. And then take his arms, kind of tuck them underneath, and then you put basically the cape over top of it. He doesn't so much wear the cape kind of wears him. It just rests on his shoulders, and that's about it. You can see why that hole has to be there. It's just enough you can still press the button. You kind of have to kind of push the cape closer to his body to get access to the button, but it works the exact same way. The cape also helps to stabilize the figure. The figure doesn't really have so many problems to stand, but also the cape adds a little bit of more stability to him. Kind of keeps him a little bit more balanced. Let's go ahead and take the cape off right now. I know, you guys are anxious to see. I'm hyping this up like it's something incredible. It really isn't. On the back of the figure's body, of course, there's that peg we've already talked about. When you press it, he doesn't so much bite. The features indicated on the packaging say, quote, biting action. I wouldn't say necessarily he bites as much as he just yawns. He just yawns. And by the way, when we had a look at the figure the first time around, this whole face, by the way, is rubbery plastic. Don't want to suffocate Dracula. This whole nose, being that it was such soft rubber anyways, literally there was just an old piece of tape that was stuck to his face. And when I ripped it off, in fact, actually, you know what? I'm going to bring back in the packaging just to show you what ended up happening. This part right here, first of all, should be down here. It always ends up in the middle section of the packaging. I checked around a couple of these on eBay where I ended up finding this figure, and it always ends up in the same place. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the way they end up packing it. But this little bit of tape, I'm going to rip this off. Actually, I think it goes right up there. It ended up being a little bit lower. It looks clearly like someone in the factory just didn't care and they just stuck it anywhere. But anyways, I'm not going to do it on the figure because I want to keep the nose at least intact this time around. But this bit of tape was stuck to his face, I guess, as long as the packaging was first made from the factory, that eventually when I got it home, I took this off and it cleanly took off the whole front of his nose in the process. And again, it made for a more hilarious review, not only for the fact that Van Helsing is garbage, but the fact that the figure also was missing a nose made for what I felt to be one of the funnier reviews that I've done. And sometimes people, a lot of times, go back, especially during the spooky spot season, they always go back and watch the no-nose Dracula. Anyways, though, here's what his face looks like, what it would have looked like with his nose still intact. As you can see, it is a very soft plastic. You can move the nose back and forth, and even like his mouth is actually a very soft plastic too. Face-wise, does it look a lot like Dracula? Not really. I mean, Dracula, anyways, was a disaster in Van Helsing. What a talk about a train wreck of a design. Give him a long ponytail. He's actually not even sporting a ponytail in this case. His hair is also something that's also soft, but the look of Dracula looked laughable. Everything really looked laughable in Van Helsing. I know. I think last time I looked at all these Van Helsing figures during the spooky spot season, I basically just trashed all of them. I was just talking horrible things about the movie. I'm going to try to be good a little bit this time. Actually, leading up to this review, I also watched Van Helsing again. I got about halfway through and I said, no, sorry, I can't do it. It was also on that VHS tape that's still, unfortunately, letting out that strong smell. I'm sorry, I'm going to get rid of that soon. Anyways, though, to press the button here on the back, again, not so much biting action as yawning action. Watch what he does. I added those sound effects, by the way. This is also the same similar face that I make, maybe not looking like this necessarily. But this is the same sort of face that I was making while I was also trying to sit through Van Helsing periodically. I may have even also made the joke that it looked like Dracula was also singing when we looked at that first Dracula figure. And it sort of does that, do that as well. I mean, what it likely does is it probably pulls down the face. There's probably a little lever on the inside here that basically literally stretches the face. This is a figure I don't think is going to last long over time, because obviously now that the rubber is exposed to air, the longer I have this in my collection, I'm sure the rubber is going to start to deteriorate around the chin and around the nose. Eventually, it may also be a no-nose Dracula and no chin either. But eventually that, I'm sure, will start to split, because literally you are just pulling it against the rubbery material. And I guess it does do an okay job. You can also make it look like he's talking, like he's saying something right now. What exactly is he saying right now? I think for what it is, it does a decent enough job. And unfortunately means, though, that there's no articulation at all in the head. The head has to be permanently planted to the neck in order to buy into the feature actually being able to work. And all it is, again, is just me pressing the button on his back. That's all it does. For the rest of his body, again, it's all just really a lot of black plastic. The jacket itself is actually a softer rubbery plastic similar to his face. And they have added some decent gold there on the front of it. Few of the snaps down below you can see have unfortunately just been left the gold off completely. He's got some decent gold also on the sides of his arms. What's rather also funny about this figure too is that he has shoulder articulation, not only back and forth this way, but he also has these joints that allow the arms to come out. And it looks like he's got like air sacs in his armpits. What is going on with these? What is going on with these arms? I guess it's so that Dracula can look like he's flying. But why back then would they have not still come up with the idea of using ball joints? I mean, ball joints is still a pretty new idea, new concept to figures. But I think ball joints, somebody should have come up with that idea long before giving him these big giant airbags for armpits. I just like want to poke it with a needle. Probably not a good idea. Then he's also got some gold here on the bottoms of his boots, so that at least is something to fill in some details. But if not for that, it's basically just an all-black figure. For the articulation on Dracula, we already know, we've established the fact there's nothing happening here for the head. Watching Van Helsing. His arms, though, do rotate all the way around. We've already looked at the laughable idea that his arms hinge out like this and giving us his weird, ugly-looking armpits. And he's got these hinge joints in his elbows. There's no articulation at all to his forearms. Hands also do rotate all the way around. They're very soft plastic. By the way, he comes included with no accessory other than just his cape and the Pigmy bat. There's no articulation. There's a little bit of articulation, I should say, for the waist. The legs do split out, but only just by a little bit, really. They also go back and forth. There's a single hinge in the knee. No articulation in the boots. And then there's some mild articulation also to his feet. One good thing is, I don't even know where the rest of my Van Helsing figures. That's not necessarily good news. But one good thing, at least about this figure, is that his nose remained intact. I didn't lose the nose anywhere in the process of this review. And then, yeah, technically he does come included with some accessories. So as advertised on the front of the packaging, he does come included with his Pigmy bat. Whether you want to decide to display with airbag armpit vampire Dracula, or if you want to display maybe the Pigmy bat with something else, at least it's one accessory that came included with the figure other than just having come included with the cape. And again, the features on all these figures, they all tend to have something going for him. Dracula had a biting or talking or watching Van Helsing expression that you could, of course, play with on the back of the button on the back of the figure. But overall, it's more of a funny kind of, well, I only picked it up really again so we could have a look at this figure the second time around here on this channel, having had such disastrous results, laughable results the first time we had a look at the figure during a spooky spot season. Feeling a bit nostalgic this spooky spot season, I decided to look around on eBay and see if I could find No-Nose Dracula. Although he wasn't called No-Nose Dracula, he was called Dracula with Pigmy bat. And I expected, really, to be honest, to go on places like eBay and find a Pigmy bat Dracula for probably like a couple of dollars. Like, who was really buying these things anyways? And, you know, funny enough, I checked around the listings and they were all like $25, $35. One, in fact, was $48. Nostalgia or not, there was no reason for me to spend that kind of excessive money, just more to a throwback on a video I had a look at where the figure was missing a nose. I ended up picking this one up, I think, for around $20. And was it really worth the $20? Not at all. It still makes for a fun-looking figure that periodically I may take out and just sort of have his mouth moving around. I mean, I've already noticed, I don't even know if you guys may have noticed even in this review too, that it looks like he's already got like a split in the bottom of his chin. This figure has not been out, has not gotten sunlight, that's at least for sure. But just the amount of time he's actually been out of the packaging, he's already started to have a split in his chin, and it's only going to get progressively worse from there. What do you guys think of Pigmy Bat Dracula? Let me know down below in the comments. I can't even say that with a straight face. Obviously, the only reason why I think anyone would find fun in this video is obviously just to the throwback of the original time we had a look at this figure, where he was missing his nose. Coined the term No-Nose Dracula. What do you guys think of this toy line? Let me know down below in the comment section. And is really Van Helsing a horrible movie? Or have I hyped it up to be a much more horrible movie than what it actually is? Let me know down below in the comments section if you think Van Helsing is a good movie or if you think it's a dumpster fire. By the way, I have destroyed that VHS tape that was letting out that strong smell. It's gone. It's not going to bother anybody ever again. Certainly as well, if you enjoyed this video, hit it a like. If you're loving the content you're seeing all throughout the month of Spottober, then make sure if you haven't already done so that you hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the bell notification. And while we have certainly finished up things for a Dracula with nose, for at least right now, there's definitely going to be a lot more spookerific reviews coming your way during this month. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.